Asterisk. I'm pregnant, William. Asterisk. Andrea's voice cracked, echoing through the sterile silence of the hospital room. Her eyes burned with a mix of pain and fury as she locked eyes with him. William froze, the crumpled ultrasound image shaking in his hand. His breath caught in his throat as the world seemed to tilt. "What?" he stammered, his voice barely audible. The weight of the words hit him like a slap. She stepped back, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Asterisk. I didn't think you'd care. Asterisk, she whispered, the words like daggers. And in that moment, everything he thought he knew about his life shattered. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" William Morrison's voice echoed down the sterile hospital hallway, his face contorted in disbelief, confusion, and raw hurt. The crumpled ultrasound image in his hand felt like the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. Andrea stood there, her back turned to him, her once warm eyes now guarded and distant. The woman he once knew, the woman he thought he'd never lose, was standing before him, and she was holding the answer to a question he didn't even know he needed to ask. The realization hit him all at once. He was about to be a father to a child he never knew existed, and it was already too late. Their relationship, built on ambition and love, had unraveled long before this moment, but now, with everything they had fought for and everything he had taken for granted, there was no undoing the past. William's empire was nothing compared to the family he'd never realized he needed. This was the one thing he couldn't control. This was the one thing he had lost. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. I've missed you all so much. It's been a tough ride with some technical issues, but by God's grace we're getting everything back on track. Thank you for sticking with me. Your support means everything. Before we begin, I want to say a little prayer over everyone watching, especially the women. To the women, may God strengthen you, comfort you, and fill your heart with peace and favor. To the men, may God guide you, bless your efforts, and give you wisdom in all you do. And may God's protection rest on every single one of you. Amen. If you're ready for today's story, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My USA and UK family, I see you. And please watch till the end, because tomorrow I'll be dropping another story you wouldn't want to miss. Now, let's get into the story. The echoes of that night lingered in the back of William's mind as he watched Andrea step away, the reality of fatherhood settling in like a cold weight in his chest. But it wasn't just about the child. It was about the love, the promises, and the mistakes he had made. "Why didn't you tell me?" The question escaped his lips again, a desperate cry for answers that felt both too late and never enough. He stood there, frozen in the hospital hallway, the words heavy with all the emotions he hadn't let himself feel. His mind spun, racing through moments, places, and memories every second they had spent together, crashing over him like a tide he couldn't outrun. Andrea turned away, her back to him as she stared out the hospital window, her shoulders rigid. Her silence spoke volumes, and it cut deeper than any words she could say. She didn't have to explain it to him. He already knew. She had been carrying their child all along, and he hadn't even known. It was the shock of the moment that knocked the breath out of him. But as his mind snapped back to their past, he realized how it had all led to this point. It wasn't just about missing the news of the baby. It was about everything he had done and everything he hadn't done. His thoughts drifted back to their first days together, the passion, the way she had lit up his world, the way she had made him feel alive in a way no business deal or board meeting ever could. They had met by chance, a twist of fate in a crowded cafe in Georgetown. He had been there for a quick coffee before his next meeting, but she had been an escape. He still remembered the way her laughter had filled the room, making everyone stop and turn. She had an energy about her, an untamed freedom that made him feel like the rules he'd lived by for so long no longer mattered. They talked for hours that day, two strangers connecting over shared ideals and a glimpse of what could be. He had been captivated from the start, falling hard, fast, and without reservation. In the beginning, it had felt so easy. She was everything he wasn't: spontaneous, free-spirited, full of life and color. They balanced each other in a way he had never experienced before. It wasn't about control or conquest. It was about connection, but somewhere along the way, William had let the world he had built consume him. His empire, his career, they had been everything. It wasn't that he had meant to push her away, at least that's what he had told himself, but in his pursuit of power, wealth, and success, Andrea had become secondary. He thought she understood. He thought she knew how much he was sacrificing for them, for their future together, but in his blind obsession, he hadn't realized the toll it was taking on her. The warning signs were there, of course. He just hadn't listened. One night, months before she left, Andrea had sat him down. Her eyes, always so warm and open, were now full of quiet sorrow. "William," she had said, her voice barely above a whisper, "if you don't change, I'm going to lose you. I won't wait forever for you to make time for me." He had dismissed her words then, convinced that his work, his sacrifices would eventually be worth it. She deserved the best, and he was giving her the best he could. At least, that's what he thought. The business deals, the endless meetings, the late nights, he was doing it all for her. But Andrea was not some prize to be earned. She wasn't a number to be calculated or a deal to be sealed. She was a person, a woman, who had needs, who had dreams, who wanted more than just the polished surface of his world. She wanted him, not just his success, and in his arrogance, he had ignored that. When she left, it was a quiet thing. No dramatic confrontation, no shouting, just the soft rustle of her suitcase and the slow closing of the door, and then silence. The silence of a man who had everything except the one thing that mattered most. William remembered the hollow feeling in his chest when she was gone. It was the kind of emptiness you couldn't fill with money or power. It was the kind of emptiness that stayed with you, haunting every corner of your life. He thought he could move on. He thought he could bury himself in his work and forget about her, forget about the life they almost built. But it never worked. His victories felt shallow. His wins felt hollow. What had he been doing all these years? The question gnawed at him now as he stood there, still reeling from the revelation of a child he didn't know he had. The years he had spent running from the very thing he had wanted all along, asterisk, asterisk, love, asterisk, asterisk. And now, Andrea was standing in front of him, pregnant with the child he never knew existed. "I didn't think you'd care," she had said. And maybe, in some twisted way, she was right. He had always been too focused on the next deal, the next success. He had never thought about the life they could have shared, never thought about the future they had dreamed of together. And now, it was too late. As the silence stretched between them, William's mind raced, piecing together the past like a puzzle with pieces that didn't quite fit. The guilt sat heavy in his chest. His empire, the business he had poured his life into, meant nothing now. All that was left was the undeniable truth. He had asterisk, asterisk lost, asterisk, asterisk her. He had lost the one thing that could have given his life true meaning. He had been warned, over and over, but he hadn't listened. The weight of fatherhood settled on his shoulders. But it was more than that. It was the weight of asterisk, asterisk, missed opportunities, asterisk, asterisk. The weight of asterisk, asterisk, regret, asterisk, asterisk. Of asterisk, asterisk, promises, unkept, asterisk. How could I have been so blind? He muttered under his breath, the words filled with a bitterness that tasted like ash. But it wasn't just about Andrea. It wasn't just about the child. It was about everything he had lost because of his choices, because of his inability to see what truly mattered. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked again, this time quieter, almost pleading. There was no answer, only the painful silence between them. She didn't have to say anything. He knew. He knew everything he had done wrong, everything he had missed. Asterisk, asterisk. Have you ever waited too long to fix something important? Sometimes life gives you a second chance, but not always. Don't let regret define your story. If you've been holding back from what matters most, take action and subscribe to Mr. David's stories before it's too late. Asterisk, asterisk. And, as William stood there, alone in the quiet hum of the hospital. He realized that it wasn't just about the baby. It was about him and the man he had failed to be. The emptiness of the mansion felt suffocating. It had been months since Andrea left, but the silence still echoed through the grand halls of Marlin Mansion. The laughter that used to fill the space was gone, replaced by the hollow sound of his footsteps. William wandered through rooms he had once filled with pride, but now they seemed to mock him. He had everything, bigger mansions, more wealth, more power than most people could dream of, but it was all meaningless. Every success, every deal, every victory felt empty now. He had chased them all for Andrea, thinking that if he could just build a life that was perfect enough, she would stay. But it hadn't worked. She was gone, and all the things he had accumulated in her absence couldn't fill the void she had left behind. The days blended together. The sharp sting of her departure had dulled, but the ache of loss was constant, a dull throb in the pit of his chest. He threw himself into work, diving into endless meetings, responding to calls and emails, anything to drown out the thoughts of her. But no matter how much he buried himself in his empire, his mind always wandered back to her. Sometimes, in the quiet of the evening, when the phone sat untouched on the table, he would pick it up, dial her number, and wait. Each time, it rang and rang, until the voicemail picked up, her voice colder than it had ever been. "This is Andrea. Leave a message." He couldn't bring himself to leave one. He would hang up and stare at the screen, wondering if she was thinking about him, if she missed him, if she ever would again. It was in those moments that the truth hit him hardest. Asterisk, asterisk. She wasn't coming back. Asterisk, asterisk. He tried to remember when things had gone wrong. Flashbacks of their time together played like a movie in his mind. Their first date, her laughter, the way her eyes had sparkled when she talked about her dreams of the future. He had been captivated, so sure that they had everything they needed to make it work. But as their relationship deepened, his ambition began to eclipse their love. The late nights, the endless conference calls, the business trips, it all came at the expense of her. He remembered that night she had left. The words she had said burned in his memory. "I can't do this anymore, William. I won't wait forever for you to change." Her voice had been steady, but the pain in her eyes had been unmistakable. She was done waiting, done hoping he would see her, done hoping he would choose her. He had thought it was just another one of her emotional outbursts, something he could talk through, but he had been wrong. He didn't listen. And now, there was nothing left to say. That night, as she walked out of Marlin Mansion for the last time, it had felt like the foundation of his world cracked beneath him. Asterisk, asterisk. He had lost her asterisk, asterisk. And now, he was left with nothing but the cold, empty spaces she had once filled. The realization settled in like a heavy stone. Andrea hadn't just left him. She had left because he wasn't willing to change. He wasn't willing to make her a priority. Asterisk, asterisk, and now it was too late. Asterisk, asterisk. The sterile hospital room felt like a cage. William stood at the foot of the bed, his fists clenched, fighting the urge to shout. Andrea sat on the edge of the mattress, her posture stiff, her gaze distant. The ultrasound image was still in her hands, a silent testimony to everything he had missed, everything he had failed to see. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice cracked as the question tumbled out, raw and desperate. "Why didn't you tell me about the baby, Andrea?" The words hung in the air between them, heavy and suffocating. He wanted answers, wanted to understand why she had kept this secret, why she hadn't given him a chance to be a part of their child's life. He could feel the weight of his own ignorance pressing down on him, suffocating him. Andrea didn't flinch. Her eyes, cold and guarded, met his with a look that was almost too calm. She folded the ultrasound image and placed it on the side table before speaking. "I didn't think you'd care, William," she said quietly. "You were too busy for me, too busy for anything that mattered. How was I supposed to believe you'd care about a child?" The words hit him like a punch. His throat tightened, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. He opened his mouth to say something, to deny it, but the truth was there, staring him in the face. She was right. He had been too busy, too obsessed with his career, with his empire, to see the things that really mattered. "I was trying to build a future for us," he said, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. "I thought, if I worked hard enough, we'd have everything. You and the baby. Everything you wanted." Andrea let out a bitter laugh, a sound that cut through him like a knife. "Everything I wanted? Asterisk. That's times your answer." Her voice wavered, but she didn't let the tears fall. "I didn't need you to build me a future, William. I needed you. I needed you to be there. For times us asterisk. For the life we were supposed to have. But you weren't. You never were." Her words stung, each one landing with the force of a truth he couldn't deny. He had thought he was doing the right thing, thought he was making sacrifices for the greater good, for the life they could build together. But in the end, he had failed her. He had failed them both. Andrea took a deep breath, her voice growing softer. "I couldn't wait forever, William. I couldn't keep putting my life on hold, hoping you'd change. The pregnancy has been hard. I've been alone in this, from the moment I found out, and I've had to make decisions without you, because I knew you wouldn't be there when I needed you most." Her words left a bitter taste in his mouth, but he couldn't argue. How could he? She was right. He had been too consumed by his own ambition, his own pride, to realize that the woman he loved needed him, needed more than just empty promises. William took a step forward, his mind racing. He opened his mouth, but no words came. There was nothing left to say. The damage had already been done. Instead, he stood there in silence, staring at the woman he had once promised everything. He wanted to fix it, wanted to take back the years he had wasted, but how could he? "Isn't it a little too late for apologies?" Andrea's voice broke the silence. William couldn't answer. What was left to say? The cold realization settled in a father now, but a stranger to his own child. And it was his own fault. The room felt suffocating as Andrea sat across from William, her hands folded in her lap, the weight of the conversation hanging heavily between them. She had already told him about the baby, told him that she was carrying their child. But as William sat there, his mind still reeling from the revelation, he realized just how little he truly understood the magnitude of what she had been through. She had been carrying their child for months. He hadn't known. He had been so caught up in the chase, in the endless cycle of work and deals, that he hadn't noticed. He hadn't been there, not even for the most important thing in their lives, their child. His thoughts churned as the reality of impending fatherhood settled in. He had no idea what to do with this new information. How could he? He wasn't prepared for this. He hadn't even been a part of it. Andrea had faced everything alone, every decision, every doctor's visit, every moment of fear and joy. She had done it without him. And he had failed her. "Months, William." Andrea's voice broke through his spiraling thoughts. "I've been carrying our child for months. I didn't know how to tell you. And by the time I realized you wouldn't care, I had already made up my mind. I didn't need you to make a decision for me." The words hit him like a punch. She hadn't needed him. She had made the decision to raise their child on her own, and why shouldn't she have? He had proven time and time again that his career came first. He had put everything else ahead of her, her needs, her dreams, their future. All of it had come second to his ambition. Flashbacks flooded his mind. The late nights at the office, the meetings he'd prioritized over their date nights, the phone calls he had taken when she needed him the most. He had been so sure that if he built enough, if he worked hard enough, everything would fall into place. But in doing so, he had neglected the one person who truly mattered. There were moments he could never get back. He remembered the way Andrea had looked at him when he first came home late from yet another business trip. Her eyes, so full of hope at first, had begun to change. He had thought it was just a phase, that she would understand, that she would wait for him to realize. But she had grown tired of waiting. She had given him an ultimatum, and when he failed to act, she walked away. "I couldn't wait forever, William." Andrea continued, her voice steady, though he could hear the strain behind it. I knew you'd never change, and I was right. He wanted to argue, to tell her that he had changed, that he could be different. But the truth was, he had no right to say anything. The truth was right there in front of him. He had lost her. And the worst part was that it hadn't been because of any single moment. It had been the asterisk accumulation asterisk of his choices, his neglect. Andrea stood up, her face hard, but her eyes softening just a little. I don't need your apologies, William. I've already made my peace with the choices I've made. You'll never be able to undo the past. He felt the weight of those words settle on him, deep into his chest. There was no turning back. There was no way to erase the lost time, the lost opportunities, the lost asterisk love, asterisk. They say you never know what you've lost until it's gone. But what if it's not gone yet? What would you do if the person you loved suddenly walked back into your life? Share your thoughts. Maybe it's time to rethink the choices you've made and subscribe to my channel. Asterisk. As the words lingered in the air between them, William couldn't help but wonder, had he waited too long? Was there still a chance to fix everything, or was the damage irreversible? The past had already been written, but maybe, just maybe, he could still shape the future. William stood in front of Andrea, his hands trembling slightly as he fought to keep his composure. The room was silent, heavy with unspoken words and the weight of everything he had failed to do. The image of the ultrasound was still fresh in his mind, the child he had yet to meet but was already so desperately tied to. He couldn't undo the past, but there was one thing he could do now. He could try. He had to try. Andrea, please. His voice was raw, cracking with emotion. I know I've messed up. I know I've failed you, failed us. But I can't let this child grow up without me. I want to be a part of their life. I'll do whatever it takes. He took a step forward, but she didn't move. She stayed standing by the window, her back turned to him, arms crossed over her chest, but he could see the way her shoulders tightened. She was listening. I promise you, I'll change, he continued, his voice stronger now. I will put you and the baby first. Everything I've built, all the success I've chased, it means nothing if I don't have you, if I don't have our family. I've learned, Andrea. I've realized what really matters. His words felt empty as they left his mouth, but he meant them. He didn't know how to show her the depth of his regret, the burning desire to make things right. He had spent so long thinking he could build everything on his own. But now, standing in front of her, he understood that he couldn't do this without her. She stayed silent, her back still to him, and for a moment, William thought she wasn't going to respond at all. The seconds stretched, unbearable in their stillness. Finally, Andrea spoke, her voice low but steady. You think you can just walk back into my life like nothing happened? Like all those years of neglect don't matter? Her words cut deeper than anything he'd expected. She wasn't angry, not in the way he thought she would be, but the calmness in her tone was worse. She had already accepted the reality of life without him. I didn't want to be the one who walked away, he said quietly, his voice breaking. I never did. I was stupid, Andrea. But I can't sit here and pretend like I don't want to be a father, like I don't want to be there for you, for our child. Please, give me a chance. Andrea turned then, her eyes meeting his, but they were cold. I've built a life without you, William. It's not the life I wanted, but it's the one I have. I can't just forget everything that's happened. I can't trust you anymore. The words felt like a punch in the gut. He had hoped no. He had needed times her to believe him, to give him a second chance. But now he saw the wall she had built around herself. He had pushed her too far. I'm not asking you to forget, he whispered. I just need you to see that I'm trying, that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove that I can be the man you need. I don't expect you to trust me right away, but I'm asking for a chance to show you that I can change. She stood there for a long time, her gaze unwavering, as though weighing every word. Finally, she let out a sigh, her shoulders slumping slightly. I'll think about it, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But there are no guarantees, William. You've already made your choice. This will take time. There it was, a small crack in the wall. Hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep him going. Enough to make him believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for redemption. That's all I need, he said softly, his voice full of relief. Time. Please, just give me that. And as Andrea turned away, her back still facing him, William allowed himself one fragile, fleeting hope that time might be the key to healing everything he had broken. Andrea's silence was colder than any words she could have said. She had made it clear, the boundaries drawn tight around her heart. She didn't need him. Not now, not in the way he wanted. She had lived without him for months, and though the pregnancy added new layers of complexity, it didn't change the fact that her life had moved on without him. William watched her from the doorway, his hands clasped in front of him, his thoughts battling the bitter reality. Andrea had agreed to give him time, but her coldness made it clear time wouldn't be enough. She didn't need him, and it was a hard truth to swallow. I'm just saying, I'll be there. William's voice broke the quiet one evening as they stood in the kitchen. He had been trying for days to get her to see how much he wanted to be a part of this part of the child's life, part of hers, but every attempt felt like pushing against a brick wall. She didn't say much, just nodding in acknowledgement, her gaze focused on the counter. You don't need to do this, Andrea finally said, her tone almost emotionless. I'm not asking you to be a part of it. The words stung more than he expected. He had imagined her accepting his presence, at least begrudgingly, but instead she kept herself distant, closed off. But William wasn't ready to give up, not yet. For the next few weeks, he showed up. He didn't call for updates. He didn't try to force his way in. He simply appeared when he knew she had appointments, when he knew she'd be alone. He brought her coffee, little things to ease her burden, trying to show her that he was here, that he was serious. But no matter how much he gave, no matter how much he tried, Andrea remained distant, and it hurt more than he could express. She would thank him, but the coldness never dissipated. As the weeks passed, William started reflecting more on their relationship, on the space between them that had grown so wide. He couldn't help but think back to the times when he had let her down. The flashbacks flooded in. He remembered the nights she had waited for him to come home, only to find him working late again. He remembered the way she had tried to talk to him about starting a family, and how he had dismissed it, too focused on the next business deal to hear her pain. And now, standing here, trying to prove that he could change, it felt like he was too late, like every moment he spent chasing success had stolen the chance to build something real. He was desperate, but he knew he couldn't force her. He couldn't make her forgive him or forget the past. And yet, he couldn't stop himself from trying. Every day, every gesture, he hoped for a glimmer of a response, a shift in her coldness. But Andrea wasn't moving. Then, one night, as they sat on her couch, a silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. William reached for her hand, a simple gesture, but she pulled away just slightly. But it wasn't harsh, it was hesitant, almost as if she were unsure herself. I don't know if I can do this, William, she whispered, her voice softer than it had been in weeks. For the first time, he saw the vulnerability in her eyes, the cracks in the wall she had so carefully built. I don't know if I can trust you again. The words hit him harder than any rejection, but at least they were honest. Andrea wasn't completely closed off. She was conflicted, torn between the hurt he'd caused and the man who was standing in front of her, desperate to be different. I know I've hurt you, William said, his voice low but steady. But I'm here. I'm willing to do the work, to make it right. But I need you to let me in, just a little. For a brief moment, there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Uncertainty, yes, but also something softer. She didn't respond immediately, but she didn't push him away either, and that, in itself, was something. As William left her apartment that night, A small spark of hope flared in his chest. It was still cold between them, still a long road to redemption, but maybe, just maybe, he wasn't too late. Andrea sat at her kitchen table, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. Her best friend, Kendra, leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching Andrea with a quiet intensity that told her Kendra already knew the truth. They'd been friends for years, through thick and thin, and Andrea couldn't hide from her. "What's going on with you, Andrea?" Kendra asked, her voice gentle but firm. "You've been all over the place lately. Talk to me. What's really going on?" Andrea's fingers twisted the edge of her coffee mug as she stared out the window, unable to meet Kendra's gaze. The rain had started to fall outside, a soft patter against the glass, mirroring the chaos inside her. She had been so sure about everything until now. "I don't know what to do anymore," Andrea said, her voice barely above a whisper. "William is trying, Kendra. I can see it. He's trying to prove he can be the man I needed him to be. But can I really trust him again? Can I open myself up to that, knowing how much it hurts?" Kendra didn't answer immediately. She let the silence settle between them, giving Andrea the space to sort through her thoughts. Andrea's heart ached as she considered the idea of trusting William again. She loved him. She had, from the moment they met, but love wasn't enough to erase the pain of abandonment, of watching him prioritize his empire over their future. "I know you're scared," Kendra said, breaking the silence. "You're terrified of getting hurt again, and you're right to be. But you can't keep holding on to the past if you want to move forward. He's showing you that he wants to be there. For you. For the baby. And you give him a chance to prove he's not the same man who left." Andrea's throat tightened as she thought about all the times she had wished he would change. He'd promised so many times before, and he had always failed her. But this time, it felt different. There was something in his eyes, something in the way he had acted that made her believe he was serious. As Andrea tried to sort through her emotions, her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, seeing a message from William. **, I'll be at the doctor's appointment tomorrow, no matter what. Just wanted you to know. **. The message was simple, unassuming, but it hit her like a wave. A reminder of the man William was trying to become. He wasn't asking for her forgiveness. He wasn't demanding anything. He was just there, in a way he hadn't been before. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, William sat in his office, staring out the window at the pouring rain. For the first time in months, his thoughts weren't consumed by his next deal or the pressures of his empire. He was thinking about the child Andrea carried. He was thinking about being a father. It was no longer about him, about his redemption, or making up for lost time. It was about them, about the life they were going to build together, even if that meant starting from scratch. He had spent so long chasing success, thinking that it would make him happy. But now, all he wanted was to be there for Andrea, to show her that he could be the man she needed, even if he wasn't perfect. The realization hit him like a quiet storm. His need to be in their child's life wasn't about him. It was about times them, about what his child needed from him, about being the father he never thought he could be. And that meant acting without expecting anything in return. The next day, as William showed up for Andrea's doctor's appointment, Andrea watched him from across the room, her heart a little lighter than it had been in days. She still didn't know if she could trust him completely. She still didn't know if she could allow herself to believe that he would stay. But she was starting to see a man she hadn't seen before, a man who wasn't just asking for a second chance but was earning times it. "Thank you for being here," she said quietly, a voice breaking the silence. William nodded, his eyes softening. "I'm not going anywhere." And in that moment, as their eyes met, they both recognized how much they had changed. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, they were both willing to walk it together. The hospital room was dim, the soft beeping of monitors filling the silence. Andrea lay in the bed, her face a mixture of exhaustion and relief, her hand resting on her swollen belly. William stood beside her, his hands clenched tightly at his sides, eyes fixed on her. The waiting had been endless, and now it was time. Andrea had made her choice. Despite everything, the doubts, the pain, the years of neglect, she had decided that she wasn't going to shut him out anymore. She had seen the man he was becoming, and while she couldn't forget the past, she couldn't deny the small spark of hope that was finally beginning to grow. "Are you sure about this?" William's voice was soft, almost pleading. His eyes searched hers, filled with uncertainty. "I don't want to mess this up." Andrea met his gaze, a quiet understanding passing between them. She could see the man he had become in front of her. He wasn't perfect, and she didn't expect him to be, but she could see his sincerity now. She had been afraid for so long, afraid of letting him back in, but the reality of their daughter's arrival was clear. There was no room for fear anymore. "I'm sure," she said, her voice steady but soft. "I'm not doing this alone anymore, William. This is our chance. For us. For her." His chest tightened at her words, the weight of it all crashing into him. He had spent so many years lost in his own ambitions, thinking that success would fix everything. Now, standing here, it felt like all those years had led him to this moment. This was the only thing that mattered now. "I promise you, Andrea," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I'll be here. I'll be the father she deserves, no matter what." A faint smile tugged at the corners of Andrea's lips as she nodded. She didn't need grand promises or over-the-top gestures. She needed him to show up, every single day, for her and their daughter. And for the first time, she believed he would. The hours passed in a blur of pain and anticipation, and then, finally, the cries of their daughter filled the room. Andrea's face lit up, tears welling in her eyes as she looked at their baby girl. William stood frozen, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. This tiny, fragile life was his. He had almost lost the chance to be part of it. But here he was, standing beside Andrea, his hand gently resting on their newborn's tiny back. He bent down to kiss Andrea's forehead, his heart full. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving me this chance." Andrea's eyes were soft with a mix of exhaustion and something deeper, trust perhaps, or maybe a quiet hope. "We both deserve this, William." The weight of everything they had been through hung heavy in the air, but in this moment it felt like a new beginning. William looked down at their daughter, her tiny fingers curled around his, and realized that, despite the past, he had made the right choice. This was his redemption, not just for him, but for her, for them both. As Andrea rested, William stood by the window, gazing out at the city below. His heart was full, but the reality of what had happened still lingered in his mind. He could never undo the past, the mistakes, the time he had wasted. But looking at their daughter, he finally understood the weight of his choices. He had chosen to be the man he always should have been, and for the first time, he was ready to be the father and partner Andrea needed. Asterisk, asterisk. Every day we make choices that shape our lives. Some lead to regret, others to redemption. How will you make things right? Let this story be a reminder that you don't always get a second chance. Asterisk, asterisk. The time to subscribe is now. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out, and do well to click on the subscribe button and turn on notifications for the next story.